Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Portland. Welcome to another episode of Conversations in Sustainability. Today we have James Alexander here with us. Hello, James.
Hi, Lisa.
So, James Alexander is the Senior ESG Manager for Six Invest and has worked in responsible investment for 7 years, including 6 years at Future Super, Australia's largest ethical super fund, working in the ESG team. He researched listed equities and fixed interest for ethical screening and ESG integration for the fund and its clients. He's now the Senior ESG Manager at Sustainable Investment Exchange, or SIX, where he manages a team of analysts as well as conducting research, writing shareholder resolutions, and influencing institutional investors and proxy advisors to support SIX's resolutions. James studied his bachelor's at the University of Melbourne and has a master's of international relations, environmental policy. James, tell us a bit more about what Six Invest is and what it does.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me on the show as well. So Six Invest is designed really to offer two main services. One is the ability to trade shares ethically,
Mm.
and the second is to participate in shareholder activism campaigns. So Six is a brokerage platform where people can buy shares in companies uh, that they think need to improve on how they impact the environment or society, and then join our not-for-profit campaign partners in trying to change those companies.
Mm. And it's a really burgeoning industry, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, so ESG or ethical investing, which
Mm.
has had like huge growth over probably the past 20 years, but particularly in the past 10 years. And there's consumer research showing that more and more people want their shares or their bank account or their super invested responsibly in a way that aligns with their ethics.
Mm.
So I think that is a tailwind in our favor. Shareholder activism is new to Australia. So there are currently only three groups really that do it, us, Market Forces, and ACCR.
Mm.
Whereas in countries like America and the UK, it's uh, far more prominent. So, for example, one company, Amazon, got multiples more shareholder resolutions in
Mm.
1 year than the entire ASX in Australia
Wow.
last year. So that gives you a kind of an idea of the size.
Mm. And so, how would you define the core mission of Six Invest?
So I think, again, it's two pronged. One is to effectively become like an ethical ComSec. So have give people the ability to invest their shares in a way that aligns with their values, whether they care about animal welfare or wildlife preservation or worker protections, whatever it is. So give people the option to filter their portfolios using with those issues,
Mm.
um, and also seek out positive investments. Um, and then the second part, I think, is using shareholder activism to bring civil society groups to the table at large Australian companies.
Mm.
So companies talk a big game about engaging with their uh, stakeholders and community groups, but
Mm.
they are very hierarchical organizations where the majority of the power is concentrated in the board, the largest shareholders, and the senior executives. And what shareholder activism can do is leverage the power and the rights that shareholders have in order to get a seat at the table and represent whether it's communities or nature, um, people and animals that don't have a voice.
Yes.
So I think it's about democratizing how companies are run.
Mm. And let's just go back, James, to you referenced that there's some research in the mix that indicates that, the majority of Australians do want to invest their super in ethical ways. Tell us a bit about that research.
Yeah, so the Responsible Investment Association of Australasia, so RIA, do a consumer sentiment research survey every year, basically gauging Australians' attitudes towards sustainable investments across their super, their banking, and their shares.
Mm.
Um, and last year, so 2024, their results showed that 88% of Australians want their investments invested responsibly. And now you can debate what responsible means, but
Yes.
um, generally, I think people interpret that as being environmentally sustainable and socially conscious. And in particular, what's interesting to us at Six is that uh, one of the I think 55% of people want their shares invested responsibly. So that's really the market that we're focused on. And that gap just there's a huge gap in the market for someone to come in and help people understand the ethical impact of their portfolio and their investments. And that's what Six Invest is trying to do and trying to make that really easy for people.
Okay, so would you say that's kind of the critical gap in the market that Six is looking to fill at the moment? And how does that practically come to life, I guess?
Yeah, that's it. That's the gap in the market. We're trying to address it by making all the information that is out there easily accessible for people through the Six app. And so we have a feature where people can filter all listed securities on the ASX, so shares and ETFs, or whatever it is. They can filter them by ethical issues. So you can remove companies or securities that are involved in fossil fuels or gambling or tobacco or whatever it is. And
Yes.
then you can choose securities that are involved in positive things, say healthcare or renewable energy.
Mm.
And that way they can filter from all the available investments out there to ones that just the ones that match their values.
Amazing. And so, what's the long term vision for Six? Where do you see the platform in 5 to 10 years?
I think the long-term vision is, um, like I said, use for ethical investing as well as shareholder activism, and we would love to see a larger number of groups and people get involved in shareholder activism and take issues that they care about to the largest companies that are impacting them. Beyond that, I think that we have an ambition to also offer equity crowdfund raising for sustainable or responsible companies. So equity crowdfunding is this niche but growing sector of the market where companies will quite literally raise money from the crowd. Regular retail investors who get the chance to invest in interesting startups that are a bit different to investing in large publicly listed companies. And then the ultimate ambition for Six is to become kind of like an ASX for sustainable or responsible companies. So actually have those companies be able to list on the Sustainable Investment Exchange instead of going to the ASX or private equity or whatever it is. So one of the problems that a lot of startups face is that their options um, to basically provide access to the wealth that a lot of them have built, say founders of successful startups, in order to convert that into cash. They have to, like I said, list on the ASX or sell to a private equity firm or something like that, who may not be as aligned with the company's original intention as the founders and the original staff. So I think Six can offer, again, another solution there by allowing them to access some of that liquidity of their shares, but also maintain the original purpose of the company.
Okay, and James, I guess there's always this discussion that goes along around ESG in terms of, whether it's available to people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, given the cost of living and all the other things that are kind of impacting people at the moment, and whether it's just the wealthier people that are able to engage within this sort of ESG space. How do you ensure that ethical investing remains accessible and not just an option for wealthier investors?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think there's two main elements to accessibility, which
Yes.
is money and information. On the money side, so I firstly think there's a bit of a narrative that to invest ethically or responsibly means that you have to accept lower returns. But there are many studies that show that ethically or responsibly invested portfolios perform just as well as regular portfolios, particularly during periods of market downturn. So, well managed companies that are accounting for the risks that they pose to nature and society tend to do better um, when there's market volatility. And so, an example of that was during the COVID pandemic. ESG or companies that had superior ESG performance tended to lose less value than, say, like really destructive companies. I think what's interesting as well is that while ESG investing at the moment has had a bit of a downturn because fossil fuel prices are really high, and then that meant that companies that have less investments in fossil fuels comparatively did worse.
Yes.
In the 2010s, so that decade, fossil fuels did really poorly. So if you had removed fossil fuels from your ASX portfolio from 2010 to 2022, you actually would have outperformed the market. So they dragged down the market. So that's the first issue. The second is just literally the fees that are being charged. So Six charges less per trade than traditional big bank brokerage fees. And we charge roughly the same, sometimes a tiny bit more than the more tech-focused new platforms. So I think there's those two money issues. And the third thing is information.
Yes.
So like I was saying, there's just so much information out there about the sustainability of a company. And what Six aims to do is distill those thousands of data points into really easy to understand assessments of companies. And like I mentioned before, we have ethical filters in the profiles, but we aim to introduce more features where it makes people really confident that they're investing in a company that matches their values, and that they're not particularly being greenwashed, or they're not just getting information from company reports which try and portray the company in a positive light.
Okay. And so Six has supported campaigns on issues ranging from climate action to corporate accountability. How do you select which issues or companies to target?
Yeah, that's another great question. It's something that we've had to iterate in the first year or so that we've been doing shareholder activism. But I think there's some obvious trends that we're finding that make a successful campaign. The first is having a really willing and passionate not-for-profit partner. So we partner with not-for-profits that are running really highly engaging corporate campaigns
Yes.
and offer them a new tactic in their strategy, which is leveraging the power of shareholder activism. To do that, you need 100 shareholders in Australia, or you need to own 5% of the company. So unless you're a billionaire or a super fund, that is not available to you currently. So what Six does is organize those 100 shareholders and unlock the right to, say, propose a resolution at the annual general meeting, which is just annual company meeting. We also need our not-for-profit partners to coordinate communication, like comms with us. So putting out really like succinct and punchy socials, call to actions, like asking their followers to become shareholders in the companies that we're targeting to contribute to that 100 minimum that we need to hit. And I'll talk about it in a bit, but some of the NGO partners that we've worked on have just been like incredible people. They're so passionate and they're really great at mobilizing their communities. On the company side, in terms of what targets we choose, I think it really helps to have a company where there's a huge asymmetry between the risk that the company is exposed to and the benefit that they get from it. So in the case of the Morgie and Skate, we looked at Woolworths and they earn a tiny amount of revenue from selling Macquarie Harbour Farm salmon, but they're taking an enormous brand risk by potentially being linked with the extinction of the species that is endemic to that area. So that to us seemed like that's an easy leverage point. Whereas if you're trying to, say, change an entire company's business model, that is a much harder thing to do and potentially not something that is conducive to shareholder activism.
Yes. And so, have you faced resistance from companies or investors when pushing for change?
Yes, a lot. So I think I was pretty surprised at the level of resistance from the company when Coles and Woolworths are the companies that we targeted over their farm salmon supply. And you would kind of think that they wouldn't want to be associated with a potential extinction. But firstly, they wouldn't meet with the not-for-profits that we work with. And that includes people who are experts, scientists on the Government Threatened Species Committee. So they really know what they're talking about. But they only met with them after we entered the chat and, basically raised the prospect of filing a shareholder resolution. So there's that kind of first level of resistance. And then once they have acknowledged the issue, often what they'll do is either try and deflect responsibility onto someone else or delay by saying, we're working through this. We've got a process. Trust us. Just wait for our next report. That kind of thing. And so what we try and do is change the narrative around the issue. And again, a lot of it is public campaigning. So getting our story out in the media, mobilizing supporters to go, whether it's protest out the front of stores or put stickers, like one of our campaign partners, Neighbours of Fish Farming, got their supporters to put extinction warning labels on salmon in the supermarkets. So kind of like guerrilla marketing. So yeah, it's like a whole bunch of tactics, really.
Okay. So speaking about that particular campaign, and am I saying it correctly, Morgian?
Yes, although I have heard Morgian.
Okay. Do you have any plans to expand campaign topics beyond environmental and social issues?
Yeah, so social issues in Australia have traditionally been overlooked by the groups that have done shareholder activism. And that's not to criticize what they're doing. I think in Australia there are huge groups of people who are really passionate about things like climate change, and they're also very financially literate, and they understand the link between those issues and finance. Whereas currently, I don't think the communities that are interested in social issues are quite as tapped into that method of change and the links between them. So we have launched a number of campaigns on social issues. So one was getting the Channel 9 and 7 to stop showing gambling ads. And we did that with some not-for-profits, such as the Alliance for Gambling Reform, and Wesley Mission. And the other one we did was a campaign to get Australia's largest for-profit childcare centre to pay its staff paid parental leave. Um, and yeah, so we are trying to also fill that gap of the lack of shareholder activism around social issues. We know that people really care about them. So that responsible investment consumer report I mentioned earlier, it also shows what issues people most want to see their bank or super fund or shares
Yes.
deal with. And interestingly, social issues rank much higher than environmental issues. So people really care about gambling, tobacco, animal welfare. I guess that's neither an environmental or social issue, but so yeah, I think there's huge potential for it. The trick is just how do we make that link between the issue and find the role finance plays, the role large investors like super funds play, and what you can do as a potential small shareholder in that company.
Okay. Well, James, it's certainly been, a really interesting discussion. I guess to sort of cap things off, what would you be saying to people out there that are looking to invest at the moment?
Mm. Um, I think it's really important to align your values with your investments. And whether your values are just making money, that's totally fine.
Yes.
But I think most people do care about the world and care about the impact that they're having on it, particularly when the effects of it are so obvious around us. So I think look at what you're investing in, do an audit of that. You can do that for free on the Six app. So I'll do a shameless plug. You can sign up for free and you can see the ethical profiles that our team have written on what you're invested in. And, if you really like it, sign up. And then my other advice would be if you do care about social or environmental issues, get involved in shareholder activism. It's a really joyous, fun space to be in. And I think the most interesting things are often at the margins, where, traditionally we've overlooked them. So, uniting shareholders with activists is a very interesting and rewarding process.
Okay, wonderful. So that was James Alexander from Six Invest, the ESG manager. Thank you so much, James, for being on Conversations in Sustainability.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.